This summer, Wisden are being proudly sponsored by Kia UK. Kia is leading the way in electrification with their groundbreaking range of EVs. Kia have taken strides in the future of mobility with their award-winning lineup, including the EV9 and the EV6. They also have a commitment to a movement that inspires and want to help cricket fans get closer to the action. Listen to the podcast every week for Kia's movement that inspires moment, for chances to win exciting experiences at the Kia Oval this summer. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly Podcast. India are world champions. For the first time since before the inception of the IPL, India are T20 World Cup winners, and what a final it was, with Rohit Sharma's men coming from behind on multiple occasions to snatch victory away from South Africa. There is also a very juicy England Test squad announcement. Bairstow, Folkes, both Ollie Robinsons and Jack Leach out, Jamie Smith, Dylan Pennington and Shoaib Bashir in. I'm Yaz Rana, and first you'll hear mine and Phil Walker's reaction to that England Test squad, and then you'll hear Mark Butcher on the T20 World Cup final and the decision to pick Jamie Smith over Ollie Robinson. So this morning, England dropped a bold 14-man squad for the first two tests against the West Indies. Several big decisions, some of which we knew about before the squad was announced, some of which we didn't. Phil, let's start with Jamie Smith getting the gloves. It's an emotive subject for many England fans who gets the gloves. Bairstow dropped, Folkes dropped, and Smith over Durham's Ollie Robinson. What do you make of that?
It's an irresistible call. I thought that they might lean towards Robinson, which in some respects would be the more conventional pick because he's a regular keeper in all formats and he's done so well with the bat. Bats in the top five. But then Smith has this special something about him, and when you demonstrate that degree of class on an almost weekly basis, and it's the biggest open secret in the English game, and it was only a matter of time before he started playing Test cricket. And I think what England have done is find a way to get him in at the soonest possible moment without it disrupting their top five. It would have been surprising, to say the least, to have seen Bairstow stagger home from what's been a monumentally long winter and then land up in a Test squad. And for Ben Folkes, you feel for him, but Ben Folkes' virtues are offset by his limitations with the bat that were in evidence again in India. And while he never does anything wrong, he doesn't quite do enough right for this pretty ruthless and very forward-thinking setup. They're probably looking at Smith and thinking, well, we're off to Australia in a year and a half, and I know there are many other games to play, but nonetheless, that comes around very quickly. And a player like him, tall, very strong off the back foot, orthodox, but with a touch of flair, more than a touch of flair, is the kind of player that you need. You need players with a bit of otherness, and players who have the sort of the depth of self-belief. And if there's ever a young cricketer who oozes that, then it's Jamie Smith, both off and on the field. So I understand it. I'm excited by it. You assume the beginning of Jamie Smith as England's keeper bat era, but then, not that Johnny Bairstow will be listening to this, God no, but he will still be saying, well, hold on, I haven't retired. And it could well be that they are going to look at Smith's keeping, but I think overall the sense is that this is it now. This is who they're going to pin their faith on. For the next year to year and a half, see how it goes.
There's a lot of outrage on social media that Robinson wasn't picked. And I think that England have identified Smith as a serious prospect for longer. He was in that Lions squad at the start of 2023, gets that 70-ball 100 against Sri Lanka. And ever since he did that, England have clearly fancied him. They got him in a white ball squad last year, even though he hadn't played that much white ball cricket and done that well in it up until that point. I can see why they've done it. Robinson has had one excellent season in Division 2 and one really, really good season in Division 1. but Smith has caught their eye for longer. So I understand it. What I would say is bold is that as exciting Smith is as a batter, keeping at Lords is going to be tough, and he's not a regular keeper for his county.
Sure.
And however exciting he is with the bat, you never know how that affects. If he keeps in the first innings of a Test match, doesn't have a great first innings, you can see how that becomes quite difficult for a guy.
And I can understand the energy for Robinson completely, and I can understand that a few people's backs will be put up by it because there's nothing more contentious and divisive than the England wicketkeeper situation. My word. And Robinson would be, if you like, the purist's choice, and there would be a sense of kind of rightness and justification for it to be him. And perhaps there'll be some people who are really studying this closely, saying, "Well, hold on, Smith's only kept in X number of cricket matches in professional cricket." But England have gone with the immensity of potential that the bloke has. And we saw last year with Bairstow keeping wicket when he clearly wasn't fit, clearly finding his way back. And for the first couple of games in particular, his keeping was poor by his own standards. And his own standards are good, but not exceptional, as we well know. They showed where they stand on that, if you like, that existential debate, right? They've showed where they stand. And so we shouldn't be surprised that they've gone with the best young batter in the country, who's also a useful keeper, and he will learn on the job. You see, he will now be brought into the inner sanctum, and he'll be working with wicket-keeping coaches, and he will get better on the job now.
And also, Stokes plays with Ollie Robinson. Stokes has played a fair bit of county championship cricket this year. Would have had a very, very good look at Ollie Robinson. If Stokes wanted Ollie Robinson in the team, Ollie Robinson would have been in it.
Yeah, it's a good point. The other one isn't.
And the other one isn't. I was going to come on to him next. It hasn't attracted as many headlines as some of the other calls. We'll get to Jack Leach versus Shoaib Bashir in a bit. But Ollie Robinson has had a pretty good summer. He's had a pretty good summer, and I know that a video of him getting hit for 43 and over did the rounds the other day, which obviously isn't ideal, but Shoaib Bashir, week before, got hit for 37 and over, and he's still in the England squad.
I don't think he was in the squad before that day.
Yeah.
It's a mad moment from an extraordinary all-time day of cricket. But if you actually look at it in isolation, the boundary is literally 40 yards to the leg side, and he bowled okay in that game, picked up 5 wickets, and has, as you say, after a sluggish start to the season for sure, where it looked like he was bowling himself out of the squad, and then it looked like he was bowling himself back into the squad. He's been very influential for Sussex as they're top of the league.
It feels like England have hit the reset button.
Yeah. Right.
And they've made I think this is one of the bigger calls, because Robinson's got an outstanding Test record. The question mark was around his fitness. And
I'm surprised.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
And, there are 2 uncapped quicks in that squad, Gus Atkinson and Dylan Peddington. And Chris Wokes is there, Matt Potts is there. I am surprised that Robinson's beneath all of those guys in the pecking order, especially given that we've heard that Sam Cooke was pretty close to getting a call up for this squad as well. So it sounds like Robinson is really down the pecking order, and it feels like a decision has been made that Robinson won't be involved in the setup for the foreseeable. Yeah,
perhaps, and probably now, because it is a statement. You wonder if, now this is probably unfair to say, but you wonder if something has been said behind the scenes, or if there's a clash perhaps behind the scenes. You just wonder, because it does jump out at you. Chris Wokes has come back in the side. He's played 1 red ball game. I think he's playing in this current round just taking place now. So I think he will at least have 2 games under his belt. And obviously he's been off for compassionate reasons due to the death of his father. And he's obviously a storied cricketer. Nonetheless, he's come back into that side very, very quickly, and I don't think he's interested in playing overseas Test matches. So perhaps there is a horses for courses element to it. But on the Robinson case, it's hard to shake the sense, as you say, that they have said, right, well, for now, for whatever reason, you don't quite fit the bill for us, and we don't know if there is anything untoward, and there probably isn't, and so I don't know. He can count himself slightly unlucky, I think.
Because there'll be people listening to this.
If you just take it back to last summer, he didn't go too badly. He was injured coming into that Ashes series, and he was probably a game too early at Edgbaston, and then bowled okay at Lords, I thought, and then broke down at Headingley.
Yeah,
it's the last we saw of him.
And there'll be people who say Robinson was out of sorts in the one test he played in India, and that's true. But I'm surprised because England under Stokes tend to look at people's super positives, and his best moments for England have demonstrated that he's got such a high ceiling, and a higher ceiling than most, if not all, available England quicks post Anderson's retirement. He got to number 4 in the World Test rankings last year. He averages 22 with the ball in Test cricket. Understandable concerns about his fitness, but was one of England's most dependable bowlers on that 3-0 tour series win in Pakistan, where it was hot. He had to bowl difficult overs. He showed that his body is capable of it sometimes. He's not proven that he can do it all the time, but I'm surprised, especially given how many overs he's bowled this year, that he is that low down in the pecking order. Worth just touching on a couple of the other new faces. So Gus Atkinson, he's been involved in quite a few England squads, played a bit of white ball cricket for England. But I guess with Atkinson, they view him as, there's no Mark Wood in this squad. They view him as someone who is effective first change, doesn't need the new ball, gets good players out when the pitch is flat.
Well, exactly that, and that's what he's become a specialist at doing for Surrey. He changes the tempo of an innings mid-innings. He's a very useful new ball bowler, but such is Surrey's embarrassment of riches that they don't require him all the time. They throw it to him sometimes, so he is a versatile option, but he has that quick, whippy action that with a bit of reverse swing, he's got a very fast arm. You can absolutely see him being a threat in those tough, hard yards overs for sure. But look, again, it's the disconcerting bounce he gets, the zip and the nip that he gets off slightly short of a length. We've seen a lot of him this year at the Oval, and with red ball and white, old ball and new, he gets that extra little bit of kick off the pitch, and it's like an elixir. We don't understand how it works necessarily, but he has that. And again, it's hard to shake that sense even a year and a half out of the Gabba in November next year. And you'll come to Pennington now. Mark Wood, Jofra Archer potentially, fingers crossed, and Gus Atkinson,
Josh Tongue.
These are the kinds of bowlers, they have the components, the traits that they are ultimately looking for.
What I'd say on Atkinson, I think he's a real rhythm bowler. I think at this point in his career, he doesn't consistently bowl at the pace that troubles top players all the time. When he does, he looks brilliant. He looks totally brilliant, but that isn't what he always produces. So I think that would be something to keep an eye on in the early stage of his Test career.
But again, another big thing to keep an eye on is how much Stokes will bowl in this first Test match. Because if he gets through a decent wedge, as he has been doing for Durham, then that frees you up. All kinds of options then present themselves. You could play Gus Atkinson, and you could use him as a daisy bowler. Some days he does, some days he doesn't. You can hold him back for the old ball with a degree of comfort. There are so many more options if Stokes is able to get through 15 overs on average in innings.
No, 100%. And just on Dylan Pennington, because he's a name that I think a lot of people won't be that familiar with. He's been someone that people who watch a lot of county cricket have rated for a long time. He was part of England under-19 setup 5 or 6 years ago, and he's really thrived since he moved from Worcestershire to Nottinghamshire. He's kept himself fit. I think he's been an ever-presence this year for Notts, and he's done really well, bowling with a new ball, 29 wickets at 23, fourth leading wicket taker, joint second leading wicket taker in Division 1. He's not as quick as Josh Tongue, but he's quick enough. He's probably, I'd say, Chris Woke's pace.
But he's big.
Yeah.
He's big.
He looks like a Test cricketer,
yeah,
I think.
Precisely that. And he did a long time ago. He did as an under-19. That was the first time I saw him when he opened for England under-19s. And I remember thinking, okay, we have a rare, physical specimen here. And he had a quietish couple of years, really. Injuries bedeviled him when he was at Worcester, and it wasn't always the easiest track to bowl. nasty throat ball kind of pace. It was in fact the worst possible track to bowl that kind of style, and so it was understandable that he sought to leave. And I've seen a fair amount of him on the streams. I haven't seen him live actually at all this year, but I've seen a lot of him on the streams. And look, the record is there, but the impression
he passes the eye test. He looks like someone who should be in the test setup. And finally, the two off spinners, Shoaib Bashir and Dan Lawrence.
Right.
So Lawrence,
come on then.
Lawrence is interesting because he has spent a lot of time in England squads in the last year without playing. He was the spare man throughout the Ashes, was in India but didn't play. So I was quite surprised, given that the top 7 is set. You know it's going to be Crawley, Duckett, Pope, Root, Brooks, Stokes, Smith. That's set. I was surprised that they kept Lawrence in. Bashir is in over Jack Leach. Somerset are playing today. Jack Leach is playing. Bashir isn't. Bashir has struggled for wickets so far this season, but England have clearly seen something in Bashir, and it wasn't just England who saw it, in India that they really, really liked. I really like the Bashir pick, by the way, because I think that he was England's best first innings bowler in India. You know what Jack Leach is. He's played a lot of Test cricket. He's been around the setup for a long time. And I think that Bashir has a ceiling that is potentially higher than Leach's. So why not work with that? But the reason why I've lumped the two of them together is because Lawrence has been bowling a lot of off-spin for Surrey this year. Is it impossible that Lawrence starts the summer in that side effectively as a 7 or 8 bowling off-spin?
I don't think it's implausible at all. I think that he will play. If I was going to have a fiver on it, on either of them, then I'd stick it on Lawrence. It's the West Indies at Lords. It's the first test of the summer. It's going to be a seam-heavy game. The pitch will reflect that. It's Anderson's last game. They're not going to prepare a sort of dry, flat one, right? England will win the toss and bowl, obviously, because it's the West Indies' fate that they'll have to deal with Anderson on song, and it will probably be slightly overcast. And I think Lawrence will play. I think Lawrence will play at a number 8. And look, he's more than a part-timer. He's always been more than a part-timer. Surrey have made it very clear where they see him. He has been, along with Cameron Steele, their frontline spinner. He's probably bowled as many overs as anyone in the Surrey side. Almost famously, the statement on day one for Surrey is that he bowled 20-something over, 26 overs on day one of this whole summer. His figures are really good, right? And with the bat, he's averaging 50 plus. I think he's aggregated more runs than Jamie Smith.
Yeah, so in exactly the same number of innings as Smith, he's got 61 more runs. He averages 63 this summer with the bat.
Yeah, right. And again, slowish start for him with the bat. A couple of first innings failures for him in the first 3 games. But once he got going, he's shown why he was so in demand, shown why England like him. They like his style. I've said it a million times before. They like his style. They like his swagger. They like there's an edge to his game, right? And is Shoaib Bashir gonna bowl you out at Lord's first Test match of the summer? Perhaps, but very much perhaps not. Will he be a support, like a containing bowler alongside a rampant seam attack with Anderson on a sedan chair for 5 days, right? There's every chance that Lawrence plays that game. And I think it's fine to do it that way anyway, because you can say, right, well, later in the summer, if Lawrence demonstrates that he can do that job as a second spinner, but a first one on a seaming track, then come the end of the summer when Sri Lanka are here and the sun properly comes out, then you drop a seamer, but Lawrence can potentially play as a second spinner, and you do then bring Bashir in at 11. You have 2 opening bowlers, Stokes to support you, and then 2 spinners, and so the options are there for them. This might be null and void, right? And he might just be back on the motorway at 11:30 on that Wednesday morning. But I can well see that he plays. You don't see it yourself, do you?
I think it's unlikely. I think they just really rate Bashir. Bashir, it's been a weird one to assess this season because he hasn't done brilliantly. He was on loan last week again for Worcestershire. didn't do that well, got hit for 37 and over by Dan Lawrence, which is an interesting subplot in itself. But I think England just really rated him. I know a lot of people listening to this wouldn't have actually seen that much of the India series live, but Michael Atherton is a pretty sober analyst, and he wrote during the series that Bashir really could be the one that England back. In England, the pitches weren't doing that much. He was getting good players out. He bowls quickly, but still gets dip, and is a serious turn of the ball. Got massive hands. England have liked what they've seen in Bashir from day one. Again, this is a pick looking at 25.
Indeed.
They think that Bashir is a similar type of spinner to Nathan Lyon. He can get players out not just through the air, but with the additional bounce he gets. I think if he has a long test career, he'll get a lot of wickets caught short leg, caught leg slip. And I think they think he's the sort of player who can get right-handers out as well.
Look, so I was thrilled to see him in the squad. I think it's a bold and interesting and good call.
And it doesn't mean it's the end of Leach as well.
No,
sure. They like Leach. Stokes put a lot of faith into Leach in his first year in the job, and we saw the best of Jack Leach as a Test cricketer. But I think this summer is about finding out stuff. I wouldn't be completely shocked if we end up with Johnny Bairstow playing Test cricket again, or Leach coming back in again. They want to see what these new guys are about.
Yeah, no, indeed. And that's why there's a strong case to play Lawrence, right? Because can he get through a decent quota of overs in a Test match and not be utterly ineffectual? Can he do that job? He's never going to be your number one spinner that you hang an attack on all over the world, but he could very much be an adornment to that.
Yeah.
And I think it's persuasive to play either of them.
Yeah.
And perhaps one day, even this summer, they'll play them both.
Well, they do really like Lawrence, and you say Lawrence fits the current setup. He's still not played a Test under Stokes.
No, but he does like him.
Yeah.
And he's featured in squads, which even surprised himself, when he was called up.
Well, last year, he wasn't really getting
no one
run,
really saw it, and he didn't either. And speaking to people who know him, he was pleasantly surprised himself.
Yeah.
But Stokes, he likes the way he goes about his business. So look, we'll see. It's just a joy to wake up on a Sunday morning and to have a Test squad pop up in your inbox, because it's been a long old time, isn't it? This is July coming up.
It's been interesting seeing WhatsApp groups this morning, because my cricket WhatsApp groups have been quiet during the T20 World Cup. I don't think.
No, same here.
I think
same here.
Most cricket fans in England are broadly not giving a shit about the T20 World Cup.
It's hard to shake that sense, right?
And the second the squad dropped this morning, they were all fired up.
Yeah.
Everyone's got an opinion. No one's seen. A lot of people haven't seen Ollie Robinson bat a single ball, but there are strong opinions on Ollie Robinson, and I love it. I love it. This really gets people's juices flowing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess penny for Ben Folkes' thoughts.
Yeah.
We're here at the Oval. It's obviously raining here.
The Festival of Red Bull Cricket.
But I think it'll be fine come the afternoon. But yeah, seeing folks training out there and going through his routines with Alex Stewart for the umpteenth time, and I think he was expecting this.
Yeah.
But still, and he's probably not immune to it, but he's post it doing him in. And he's said many times any Test match he gets is if you like an unexpected bonus. But it must be a tough one for him to confront, probably the end of his test story now.
Yeah, I mean, I love Ben Folkes. I've been a big advocate for him playing probably more Test matches than he has played. But I think this does feel different to previous times he's been left out of the side. The India tour was an opportunity. If he averaged 45 in that tour and on broadly very good pitches, he's possibly still in the setup. He's played 25 Test matches, averages 29, and there are quite a few not outs in there. He's had chances to establish himself on the side, and it's not just the pace of run scoring thing. I know that you can point to a couple of partnerships where he was really important during that India series, but there weren't big scores. And ultimately, England won a number 7, who in India is different because you need someone who's exceptional behind the stumps, but almost literally everywhere else in the world, other than Sri Lanka probably, the keeper isn't essential. and he's not scored enough runs. I feel sorry for him. I think he's a really good player. I think he's a better bat than the Test match average of 29 suggests, and he's had good moments with the bat, but he had a chance. And I think when he's been left out before, maybe for that Australia's home series last year, for example, he had done well recently. But I think on this occasion, he had an opportunity and he didn't quite grasp it. For this episode's Kia's Movement That Inspires moment, Kia, proud sponsors of Surrey County Cricket Club, are giving you the chance to win 4 tickets to the final home fixture of Surrey's T20 Blast campaign on July the 18th against Hampshire. It's your final chance to grab friends or family to witness the electric atmosphere of the Vitality Blast at the iconic Kia Oval. For a chance to win, all you need to do is enter via the link in the description. But that was one hell of a final. India did incredibly well to recover from 38 for 3. That flexibility we talked about the other day was on show. Axar coming in early to first halt the collapse and then counter-attack. Virat Kohli reining it in, performing the role of an old-school anchor before accelerating. We'll get to South Africa later, but India, with that adaptability and star power, Bumrah was irresistible too. They're just the most complete T20 unit at the moment and are very worthy of that win.
Absolutely. It was a fabulous performance. They managed to eke out a par score, because I think the pitch was pretty decent, from having lost Rohit Pant and Suryakumar Yadav before the power play was even 2/3 of the way through. A lot of teams would have folded from then, and in a way, perhaps that England have tried to do. You shuffle the pack a little bit and move players up the order in order to hold back your sort of more devastating strikers for a time when it's more opportune for them to come in. Brilliant, but it only works if the guy that you send up there does the job for you. And Axar had an absolute blinder, didn't he? What innings he played! Allowed Kohli to kind of quietly just sort of marshal the innings through the middle. The scoreboard, without going mad, was always moving, and in the end, 176 turned out to be a great score. They've been, you win every game to win a trophy. You are the best team, aren't you? I mean, one of those two sides were going to have done it. The question mark over India, perhaps before the final, was, they hadn't really been tested at any point, whereas South Africa had kind of come through scrape after scrape after scrape to make it through, and you felt as though that might actually be something that was to their advantage. They'd kind of had those real tough battles on the road to that final, whereas India had not. But in the end, when India needed to pull out a sort of a big man performance, where they held their nerve, they were able to do it, and South Africa were not. So fabulous team, brilliantly led. Great way for Kohli to sign off, and indisputably and without any sort of caveat whatsoever, they deserve to be champions.
I promise we will get to South Africa in a second, but I wanted to ask you about Bumrah. The Cricinfo Match Predictor tool had South Africa at 97% favourites with 5 overs to go when Bumrah came on to bowl his 3rd over. South Africa needed 30 off 30 with their 2 heavy hitters, Klaasen and Miller in. He bowls that over that barely goes for anything, goes for just 4 runs. Hard it gets Klaasen in the next over. With 3 overs left, South Africa still only need 22. Bumrah bowls Jansen with that peach, and in that over, he only concedes 2 runs, and suddenly South Africa need 10s with 2 overs to go. He has everything. There's the skill, there's the deception with that late release point that he's quicker than it sort of feels, but is also the in-game nous. He seems to make all the correct decisions across format. Yeah. He is totally irresistible. He just so comfortably the best team in the world at the moment.
He is freakishly good. I mean, what he went at less than 6s through the tournament or something. I mean, that's unbelievable. I don't know, some of the pitches that were played on in the early part of the tournament were not particularly flash, but even so, it's astonishing. And it plays into the opposition anyway, doesn't it? Because you're looking at his the thought is, do we have a go at him and risk him taking 4 for and losing the game that way, or do we see him out and he goes for so few runs in seeing him out that we make everybody else more dangerous than they are in reality? And South Africa, obviously, that final, what was it, final 5 overs or whatever, when he came back, or final 4, fell into that stall where they tried to see him out, but as a consequence left themselves with too much to do against everybody else and lost the game that way. He's unbelievably good. I don't really have any better way of describing him. He has everything you would want, including an incredible temperament that means that he kind of, he, as you said, makes the right calls and can deliver whatever it is that he's trying to do, whether it be, the high risk Yorker to a big striker of the ball, or whether it's a brilliant slower ball. The skill to deliver it to absolute perfection almost 100% of the time. He's incredible.
And just thinking as well, in that specific situation at the end, Bumrah is probably the only seamer in the world that the best players still think about seeing out. You sometimes hear it when maybe Rashid Khan's playing or Adil Rashid's playing and the team looks to play out the final over or two of a spinner, but a seamer at that stage of the game, no one really commands that respect. Bumrah is on an island of one in that regard.
And the unbelievable thing, just in the instance of the final, really, was that my feeling was that Rohit had left it too late. South Africa had so little to do when he came back that actually it shouldn't have mattered. The partnership between Klaasen and Miller had kind of gotten to, basically won him the game when he came on. But I think he's the only person that could have done it, really. I think, notwithstanding whatever demons arose in the heads of the South Africans at the back end. The fact that he was there as the chief demon, or the one that was going to conjure up the feelings of all of the failures of the past. He's on you're right, an island of one.
On South Africa, they let one hell of a position slip. As a player, how much does that weight of history play on you, if at all? Because look at Marco Jansen, for example. He wasn't born when Alan dominated in '99. When you played, were you ever aware of that sort of thing? I don't know, like not winning in the Caribbean for a generation, for example. Does that play?
No, but I think it can happen to teams if you've gone a long period of time without winning, or you've had a record of failing at semi-finals or whatever it might be. No matter that the personnel might be entirely different, because the narrative around your team and your country's cricket is that this is what happens given this situation, you cannot help but feel the pressure of that. Now they wouldn't have been, up until the finish line was in sight, that would never have entered their heads. As I said, they played the entire tournament. They kind of dispelled all of those ghosts by hanging on and winning games in tight situations right the way through. But then you get the closer you get to the finishing line, the more difficult it comes to get to it. And of course, once Klaasen had gone, and then Jansen comes in. Jansen, who despite being wildly talented himself, you kind of get the feeling that you've seen it before. You remember in the semi-final last year where he couldn't land it on the cut strip. He kind of started in very shaky fashion yesterday. You feel as though he just is generally quite a nervy type of player, you would imagine, in high pressure situations, or at least that's what's appeared to happen over the last couple of World Cups. And suddenly the second you get yourself into a position where you could win, and then suddenly you lose one of the big guns, the fear of, oh my God, is it going to happen again? I've heard all of this stuff spoken about our cricket team. I've watched the videos and the clips from the past, seeing us sort of seemingly have it won and not do it. And there it is. It comes rushing in and becomes almost sort of, like the boulder rolling down the hill. The momentum of it, sort of crushes you in the end. So that's going to hurt so badly because they had it won. I mean, they had 30 of 30. Even with, even when you're 2 wickets away from the bowlers, you've got it won. They'll be incredibly proud of what they've done under Aidan Markham to get to that point, but then to get to that point and fail, ouch.
we use quite dramatic sounding words, I think, to describe very small moments when it comes to collapses like this, freezing or choking. And all it is in a game that tight in a World Cup final is a couple of very small wrong decisions where you don't quite do what you normally do. And going through the final 3 overs, when Janssen falls to Bumrah, South Africa need 20 off 14 with Maharaj on strike. The next time David Miller faces up, that is suddenly 19 off 9. The equation completely changed. Maharaj had 2 balls left in that over to face. 2 dots would have been fine, but it's dot and then it's single. So Maharaj keeps the strike for the start of the penultimate over, starts it dot, dot, 1, and the game is completely different after those 5 balls. It's a mistake, I think, for Maharaj to take that single. You need Miller to... the run rate is completely within their control at that point.
Yeah.
He takes a single. He's a number 9 bat. If anything, he's potentially higher number 9 in T20 cricket.
Yeah.
He should have had the strike at that point. And that is a wrong decision.
Yes.
Maharaj and Miller.
Incorrect. Yeah. Sorry. I mean, they were incorrect. You are correct. And as you say, that on those small margins, when you get very, very close to the end of a run chase, the game is won and lost. And then when Miller eventually does get himself back on strike, he kind of feels that he's the pressure that he's under becomes crushing, in order to hit boundaries and to try and keep Maharaj away from the strike from them. But really and truly, that conversation should have happened when Maharaj walked to the crease. Either block it or have a free swing or whatever you're going to do. But whatever you do, don't keep the strike for the following over, because that's not good. And those are the calls that kind of turn to turn what should have been a stroll into something that was anything but.
Yeah. The tournament is now over. What are your how will you look back on the 2024 World Cup?
I think it's a massive missed opportunity. I really do. You've got all kinds of issues, I suppose. One being that we're sort of in the rainy season, the hurricane season, or whatever it is in the Caribbean to start with. You've got poor pitches in the American leg. So if you to use the business speak of KPIs, your key performance indicators, if they were to bring the game up and to create a new audience for the game in the States and to revitalize an audience in the Caribbean, I don't think either of those things have been done. The thing that annoys me the most, and I was fuming about it yesterday, how do you start a T20 final at 10:30 in the morning local time? Now, it's just ridiculous. Do we need to stop the pretense of trying to spread the gospel of the game around the world if you're going to do things like that, in order that the game is then at prime time for an Indian audience? It's complete nonsense. Play them all in India. Don't bother with trying to play them somewhere else. If you're going to do something like that, I've spent plenty of time in the Caribbean and in India, right? Now, if there is one population that will get up at any time of day or night to watch a game of cricket, it's in the Indians, right? So it's not really a massive issue for them for the game to be on at awkward times of the night, because the viewership and stuff would be the same no matter what. In the Caribbean, no one gets up before midday in the Caribbean, for crying out loud. If you throughout the tournament, the matches are being played locally, but for an audience that is somewhere else. It's like playing cricket over Zoom. I don't get it, and I'm unbelievably disappointed that was the case. It's incredibly disrespectful to the local population, I think, more than anything else. And of course, it then does nothing to kind of to dispel the view that there is only one, there's only one country in the cricketing world that really matters. Can you imagine if it was being played in Australia or something, and suddenly they started playing it playing T20 matches or whatever start times in order to suit an audience that was thousands of miles away in India? It would never happen. And the only reason it happens in the Caribbean is because the West Indies are so needy and needful of the support of the ICC and of India that they'll bend over backwards to do anything in order to make sure that they get another tournament. Now that to me is not taking care of the world game in any way, shape, or form. So as far as the actual tournament itself is concerned, the final was brilliant. The right team won it in India because they were the best side, but the tournament was underwhelming to say the very least, I think.
I think it's a really important point, the start times for games, because I had a lot of maybe more casual cricket fans messaging me asking why the ground's so empty in the Caribbean. Well, the answer is that these are, in some cases, really small islands with very small populations. And you've got games starting at 10:30, often on weekdays, when you've got multiple games taking place at the same venue in a short space of time. So, and I think that's important because that detracts from.
It's hugely important. I mean, the only people mad enough to start any T20 cricket at 10:30 in the morning is us with finals day.
Yeah.
let alone the major finale of a world competition, 10:30 in the morning in Barbados on a Saturday. It's absolutely insane.
Well, you've got your wish. The next T20 World Cup is in India. So
there you go. Well, then we don't have to pretend anymore. We can just play normally and everyone's happy, right?
Yeah. All good on that front. We've got a test squad today. England are in action on July the 10th for Jimmy's last test match against the West Indies at Lords. I guess the big news is, Butch, that Jamie Smith is in it. He is the new keeper. It means that both Ben Foakes and Johnny Bairstow no longer possess the gloves. Neither Durham's Ollie Robinson, who's had an outstanding year. He averages above 80 in the championship. He's kept very well as well for Durham and has done a lot of that work in front of Ben Stokes, who's played a fair bit for Durham this season. For one, how cricket Twitter has gone straight from being angry over Foakes versus Bairstow to being angry over Robinson versus Jamie Smith. Do you not go on?
Yeah, well, I mean, as you mentioned, so Ben Stokes, England captain, is a teammate of Ollie Robinson, and Jamie Smith has got the nod. So you can't blame a sort of. I mean, the usual thing is to blame some sort of Surrey bias, isn't there? But it's difficult to do that when the captain of England actually plays for Durham.
Yeah.
As to whether or not Robinson or Smith are going to be the better bet going forward, I can't tell you. What I do know is that Jamie Smith is a wildly talented batter and potentially sort of coming in at sort of 7 or whatever. Could do exactly what Ben Stokes and Brendan McCullum want from a player coming in and batting with the tail. But but as far as his keeping is concerned, he's got an enormous amount of work to do. In much the same way that Johnny Bairstow and anybody probably would compare unfavourably with Ben Foakes, then Jamie Smith starts as a keeper who is not as good as Johnny Bairstow yet. So it's going to be very, very difficult. It's always very difficult for these guys because no matter what backing you get from the inside, if you begin your Test career, Lords, ball hooping around after it goes past the bat, your feet on a slope like this, it couldn't be a more difficult place to start. And if you start off and drop a couple of clangers, imagine dropping the ball for a 5 for Jimmy Anderson's last Test match, and the abuse that you'll get for that. It's a very difficult place to start from. Which is not to say that that's going to happen, but it could. With somebody who is as inexperienced with the gloves and has so much to learn with the gloves as Smith. So you can only imagine that they feel that Smith has got such a high ceiling that they want to get him in as early as possible in order to get him ready and have the caps under his belt before potentially the Ashes in however long's time.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. I mean, in the Smith-Robinson comparison, Robinson has had a better summer against the red ball, but Smith has been on the radar for longer. He's got that 70 ball 100 for England Lions against Sri Lanka in February last year, and you put in a knock like that under the just in front of important people in and around England selection. They've clearly been really interested in Smith ever since that performance. He's had 2 very good years in the championship back, and I don't think it's irrelevant that he's really gone on leaps and bounds in white ball cricket as well. I think he's someone that England view as a potential all-format player very, very soon. the logic is give him as much time to be successful as possible with 2025 being such a big year. I guess what I'd ask is, English cricket's got this rich history of giving the gloves to people who maybe don't do it at their counties or potentially command a spot as a specialist batter in their own right. And I just wonder, you played with Alex Stewart, who played with the glove sometimes, didn't others. Matt Pryor, slightly different, but you said on last week's pod, someone who first got in the side for his batting. I guess the question is how a player's batting can obviously be affected if it doesn't go well with the gloves.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, look, I've kind of given up arguing with it now. I mean, when England sort of on the back of what I thought were pretty good performances from Ben Foakes with the bat, in places like South Africa and whatever, and against South Africa at home, when those performances weren't good enough to kind of keep him in the side, I kind of gave up the argument. Really, it was kind of, well, what's the point? What does the guy have to do? Yes, he's not Adam Gilchrist, but he's a great keeper, solid batter down the order. But if that's not what you want, then what's the point? I mean, of all of us howling at the moon and saying that this is wrong. He's the best keeper in the country, and kind of clearly those are not the criteria upon which this is being judged. And to a certain extent, I can understand it, because there is a certain way and a certain style that England want to play, and so be it. They make the calls. They're big calls, and they're calls that a lot of people, purists in particular, aren't going to like. But at least they set their stall out to say, this is what we want to do. This is how we want our team to play. And in order to make that as likely as possible, we're going to pick the players we think have got the ability to carry it off. And so, and if it goes badly, then the onus is on them to kind of to hold their hands up and say, perhaps we got that wrong, or maybe we should have gone for Robinson, or maybe we should have stuck with Foakes all this time. But we know enough from Ben and from the team over the last however many years that apologising for sort of for things that have gone in the past is not something that they do. They're always looking forward. So that's where we are.
Yeah, it's got the potential to be box office. Jamie Smith at number 7. I think it's very, very exciting what he could do with the bat. Anyway, cheers for your time, Butch. Catch you next week. That's it for today's show. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, Mark. We'll be back tomorrow with the one and only Brian Charles Lara. Kia wants to help you get closer to the action and create inspiring memories that will last a lifetime. Last year, Kia launched a competition to give young cricket players the opportunity to play at the inspiring Kia Oval, and this year they want to do it all again. The Kia Young Cricketer competition is an amazing experience for 11 to 16-year-olds to live out their cricketing dreams. The day consists of a morning coaching session from Surrey's fantastic coaching staff and an afternoon tournament on the iconic outfield itself. If you're aged 11 to 16 and want to experience this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity on September the 14th, all you need to do is enter via the link in the description.